Everybody, this is session 3 of our learning lounges as part of our Care Leaders Bootcamp. So today we'll be talking about effective communication. So far we have spoken about recruitment, talked about how to support your staff with career development, and then coming up in the last 2 sessions after this, we'll be talking about health and well-being in the workplace and creating a positive working environment. But today is all about communication. My name is Mark Story. I'm the head of learning innovation at Future You, and during my career I've spent a lot of time working with different organizations to improve their effectiveness. And I would say the most common issue that people have in a working environment is communication. And that doesn't necessarily mean that communication isn't working. It just means that communication is a massive topic and is very important to people. So paying attention to it, thinking about it, giving it the appropriate amount of thought and doing what you can to get it right is going to really impact your organization. It's going to impact your service users. It's going to impact the quality of care that you're providing. And we will explore how that happens. It's going to be slightly different today in that if I was to run a session on covering everything about communication, we'd be here for about 3 weeks. We've got 26 minutes to do this. So I'm going to talk about some very specific ways of thinking about communication. And then something that we haven't done before, we are going to do an example together. We're going to workshop an example. So we're going to think about something that we need to communicate and think about how best that's communicated. And we're going to use the structure that I'm going to present to do that. So it might completely fall flat on its face. It might work absolutely brilliantly, but what I hope we'll get out of it is a really good appreciation of how much thought we need to give communication. So these are the things that I'm going to cover. As with all of these learning lounges, I'm going to very briefly talk about the 3 principles of self-development, which I think are essential for anybody doing any learning and wanting to improve themselves. Then we're going to move into communication and specifically kind of bring it back to basics, ask ourselves, what is communication? Then I'm going to read you a poem and I'm going to ask you what Mr. Kipling can teach us about communication. And you might know Mr. Kipling as somebody that makes cakes, but it's not that Mr. Kipling, just to give that away now. Then I'm going to share with you one technique for thinking about communication and making sure communication is effective. And we're going to use that technique to workshop and work through an example. Then we're going to see what we learned from that, and we're going to summarize that and have that as our takeaways from this session. So if everybody's ready, here we go. As with all of these learning lounges, the first thing that I want to share with you is these really important 3 principles for self-development. So if you're looking to improve any aspect of yourself, excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough at the moment, then please be aware of and adopt these 3 principles. First of all, self-awareness is the key to self-development. So when we're talking about communication, when we're talking about creating a positive work environment, whatever it might be, you need to be really honest in looking at yourself and thinking about how well you do at those things. So are you a good communicator? You don't have to be a good communicator. You might be a bad communicator. That's okay. The important thing is you know whether you're good or whether you're not good, so you can identify the areas that you need to improve in. So being self-aware is the key to self-development. Second thing is that real life is the best classroom. So real life provides us with all the opportunities we need to practice the things that we want to get better at. If it's communication, we are constantly communicating. So real life will give us all the opportunities we need to practice. The third thing is that we often need somebody else to help us unpack the lessons that real life gives us. So we can be self-aware, we can reflect on our own performance, but getting other people to give us feedback on how we're doing, or to challenge us to make sure that we're thinking about all the angles of our performance, is really important in helping us grow. So self-awareness, key to self-development. Real life is the best classroom, and we need someone to help us unpack the lessons that life gives us. Take those 3 principles, and whatever it is that you do, if you apply those, you will continue to improve your performance. So on to communication. There are 2 really back to basics things that I want you to take away from this. The first is a definition of communication. What is communication? We talk about communication all the time. Very specifically, communication is giving or exchanging information, and it could be in a number of ways. It could be by speaking or writing, or by showing a video, or by the medium of dance. However it might be, it's about giving somebody some information or exchanging information with somebody. So communication at its very core is about the exchange of information. The 2 little boxes I've got at the bottom are perhaps the most important things to consider when you're thinking about the effectiveness of communication. Communication requires somebody to provide information and somebody to receive information. Now, the real kicker in this is that it is the sender's responsibility to make sure that communication is effective. So when we think, oh yeah, I communicated that, I said that in a team meeting, or I sent an email around, or whatever, if people don't read it, it's their problem. Well, actually, it's not their problem, it's your problem. If you're communicating something and people are not receiving it, there is something wrong with the way that you are communicating it. So as a sender of information, you have a responsibility to check that that message has been received by the receiver. And the person receiving the information has got loads of stuff going on. They've got, they've got Facebook or Instagram to look at. They've got loads of other information coming their way. They've got to think about what they're having for tea that night. They've got a whole range of things that are competing with your message. So you need to make sure that your message is getting through. And the only way to make sure that your message is getting through is to either ask them and check that that message has been received, or to observe whether they are doing something with that information, and then you can be sure that they have received it. But the real takeaway here is that it is the sender's responsibility to make sure that communication is effective, not the receiver's. So with that in mind, I want to read you a poem. So this is a poem by a guy called Rudyard Kipling. You may have heard of him. He's not the guy that makes the Kipling cakes. And the poem is called 6 Honest Serving Men. And even though you can read it, I'm going to read it out to you. So I keep 6 honest serving men, and they taught me all I knew. Their names were what and why and when and how and where and who. I send them over land and sea, I send them east and west, but after they have worked for me, I give them all a rest. The reason I want to share this poem with you, other than I thought I'd lighten up our Tuesday, is because it contains within it 6 really important questions. And I'm going to apply this to a communication technique. And those questions are what and why and when and how and where and who. So again, in terms of taking things away from today, if you take away those 6 words, then you will improve your communication. I'll explain exactly what I mean by that. So I'm calling this the 5W1H. 5W is the what, why, when, where, and who. and the 1H is the how. So they're the 6 honest serving men, the 6 questions, 5 W's and 1H. And I'm suggesting that if you ask these questions of anything that you're intending to communicate, you will undoubtedly arrive at a more structured, better way of communicating the thing that you're trying to communicate. So let's work through it, and then we'll actually work through a real life example. So asking the question who. So you may have something to communicate. The first question is, who needs to know this information? I have some information. Who else needs to know it? So might it be the management of where I'm working, the owners? Could it be the residents? Could it be the residents' families? Could it be everybody, all the staff? Could it be particular teams within the staff? Could it be particular shifts within the teams? Could this be something that we're trying to communicate to prospective residents or people that we're hoping to start caring for? Is it some of the professionals that we work with? So could it be the pharmacist or the pharmacy or the doctors? Could it be the neighbours in our area? Or could it be individual staff members? And you could keep going with that list. If you've got some information, the first thing is ask, who needs to know this information? Second thing to ask is, so this is the what question. What do they need from you in terms of information? And what do you need from them? What do you want them to do with this information? So answering the question, what do they need from you, will help you shape the message. So for example, you might be trying to communicate a change in medication for a service user. So what does a member of staff need from you in order to make sure that they're administering the new medication? So they don't need to know everything about that resident. They don't need to necessarily know what their hobbies are. They don't necessarily need to know, I don't know, where they got brought up. But they will need to know some other things. So what are their allergies, for example? They'll need to know what medication change it is. How often does the new medication need to be given? There'll be a whole range of whats that you need to provide them. And what do you need from them? So what information is it that you need them to receive from you, and what action do you need them to take? Well, you need them to change the way that they administer that medication. So that is the answer to that what. So when does this information need to be communicated? So let's say it's a change in medication. Well, we can't wait until next year to communicate that. It may be daily medication. It may be multiple times a day this medication needs to be given. So that suggests that it needs to be given fairly instantly, certainly within the next, I don't know, hour or 2 hours. Excuse me. So it can't wait for a team meeting. It can't wait for a monthly get together. It can't wait for a monthly supervision. It needs to be communicated in a different way when you're considering the when. So how do you give this information? So do you text message them? Do you email them? Well, there's probably somewhere that they go to receive this information. It might be a MAR chart, it might be a care plan. So that would be the how you communicate this. But that might not be enough. You might want to verbally communicate that too, to make sure that that message is understood. So when you think about the how, there may be multiple ways in which you address the how you communicate. So where would you communicate this? Well, in answering the how, we've already agreed that this might be communicated best on a MAR chart or on a care plan. So that gives you a sense of the where. But it may also be that if you want to verbalize it, then you don't want to verbalize it in front of all the residents that this resident has got a change in medication. You might want to do that verbal update to the member of staff privately, not in earshot of other residents. And why? Why is this important? So why would it be important that you communicate something like that? Well, there's somebody's health at risk. And how can you determine whether it's been effectively received by the sender? So do you get them to sign something? Do you get them to confirm that they have taken action as a result? Do you follow up afterwards? Depending on the importance of it, you might well do. You might go and check that MAR chart after they've administered the medication. You might even observe them administering that medication to make sure that they have received that message effectively. So by going through these 6 questions, you can build up a picture of how best you should be communicating a particular message. So in a learning lounge first, I am going to stop presenting that, and I'm going to get us to work through an example. So let's see if this works. There we go. Right, this is an audience participation session. So we're going to give this about 7 minutes. We'll see if we can get some of these completed. So the thing that you have to communicate is that you have a new resident or a new service user. So what I'd like you to do is come off mute and just shout out who would need to know that you have a new resident or a new service user.
All the team.
All the team. Lovely. All the team. Okay. Anybody else?
The kitchen staff, the housekeepers, all the team.
The kitchen staff, housekeepers.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Anyone else?
Obviously, the admin, they are the one that brought them in.
Okay. Very good, whoever's contributing there. Any other groups? Anybody else?
Every stakeholder.
Every stakeholder?
Yes.
And any stakeholders in particular that you can think of?
Social workers.
Nice.
Carers, managers, and all that.
Brilliant. Okay. I'm sure if we spent some more time, there would be loads more on that list, but that's a really good list. Okay, so we have a new resident, new service user. What is it that we have to communicate? Yeah, what do we need to communicate? What do they need to know?
His allergies, his age, his mobilities.
Yeah, brilliant.
Medication wise.
Needs, yeah.
Eating and drinking.
Medication, brilliant. Eating and drinking, yeah. Anything else?
His family.
Family members, yeah.
Incontinence care in
Brilliant.
terms of
Incontinence, and I'm going to put another one there, hobbies and likes. So this particular resident might like, I don't know, trains. That might be useful to know. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we could, again, just continue with that list, but let's stick there for the moment in the interest of time. So when do these people, all the team and kitchen staff and housekeepers and managers and social workers and so on, when do they need to know that that you have a new resident or a new service user?
Straight
Before
away
the
on the
resident-
handover.
Straight away during handover. Yeah. Okay,
before the
definitely.
residents to come over, because the people from cleaning and laundry, they have to prepare the room.
Yeah. Okay. So it needs to be straight away, as in, I don't
Yeah,
know, within an hour, say. I mean, you can't wait half a day because the resident might miss out on some meals then, and you can't, or some medication even. And you can't wait a day because then they might miss out on having their room cleaned or a whole range of different things. Okay, that's good. Right. How are we going to communicate this? So are we
and
going to just
over.
during handover? Brilliant.
Yes, in the written form as well.
In the
Written form through the care plan.
care plan? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, anything else? Any other ways in which we might communicate this?
Notice board.
Brilliant. Yeah. Anything else?
Verbally.
What was that?
Emails.
Email. Yeah. Lovely. Okay, so where do we need to communicate this? It might be fairly obvious from what we've written there. So I'm going to put in handover and write in care plan and on notice board and in email. Okay. Right. Why do we need to communicate this?
For safety hurdles.
Yeah. For safety and safeguarding of the individual. Okay.
To ensure continuity, especially in medication.
Continuity care meds. Brilliant. And how
Effective. To be
sorry.
effective. To be effective.
To be effective. Wow, great stuff. Okay, and then this last box, how are we going to check whether we have communicated that effectively?
If
Random checks. We can do spot checks to see if the whatever has been communicated is being done properly.
Okay, make sure care plan is being actioned. Lovely. Anything else? Anything else we might do there?
yeah, we can ask the staff
Brilliant.
if
No,
they
you can
know
also
if
you can also
if the
ask
resident will arrive.
Yeah.
you can also ask the person if he's if he can communicate, if you know how, if you can ask the person involved, that's the resident that comes
Brilliant.
in.
Brilliant. Okay, very well done, everyone. Give yourselves a pat on the back. What we've done there is gone through a process of thinking about something that we need to communicate and thinking it all the way through as to who we need to communicate to, what we need to communicate, when, how, where we're going to do that, why, and how we're going to make sure that it was effective. Now, some of these things, we've got handover meetings, we've got notice boards and so on, and we use those every day or multiple times a day to communicate certain things. And we don't necessarily think about it that much. We get a new resident, so we put something in the handover meeting. We make sure that people are aware of the care plans. We put something on the notice board maybe. There might be a board that shows who's in what room, and we bring people's attention to that. And we might all be doing random checks or checks all the time to make sure that people are happy. We might be asking the residents themselves all the time to make sure that things are working properly. But going through this process will help you identify that there may be improvements to certain things that you can do. So it may be that typically if you get a new resident, you may not have a process for making sure that social workers or the pharmacy or the local GP are informed of that new resident. And that might be a simple weekly sheet to say, these are the residents that we've got, or these are the new residents that we're taking in. So just by giving some communication, some real thought, can help you improve the way that you communicate. So if I just share the tab again, let's see if I can do this. Is that working? There we go. There we are. Okay, so we have worked through an example. Very well done, everybody. So let's think about what we have learned from this session. So first of all, it is the sender's responsibility. So in all of that workshop that we just did, it is not the carer's responsibility there. It is your responsibility to make sure that you're communicating all of those things effectively. I certainly suggest using that technique, the who, what, why, where, when, and how, to give your communication structure. Just because you always have handovers doesn't mean that those handovers are the best way of communicating things or the only way that you communicate things. If you have a new resident, you might use email, you might use notice boards, you might talk directly to carers, or you might talk directly to residents to check that those things are being done effectively. And you may not have thought of that before without using that technique. The third thing that I want us to think about is when we go through that who, what, why, where, when, and how, we might be thinking about that from our perspective. And we think about how we're communicating to the organization, to staff, or across the organization. But think more broadly than that. Think about how teams are communicating with each other, not just with you. And then you'll start becoming a lot more strategic as a manager, rather than just thinking about how you communicate. Think about how other people and other teams communicate and what they need to do to be better at communicating with each other. So when you're going through the 5W and 1H technique, maybe think, okay, well, if I am housekeeping, then how would housekeeping make sure that the carers are aware of any issues that they come across while they're cleaning rooms, for example? So do they have an opportunity to feed into the handover? And the final takeaway here is that by reviewing how effectively we communicate could be a really great opportunity for an aspiring manager when we talked about career development last week. So give somebody the task of reviewing how effectively we communicate a new resident, for example, and implement some changes to improve the process. It is a great opportunity for somebody to demonstrate some management skills. So I believe that by implementing these good communication practices, care homes can continue to build a dedicated, skilled workforce and continue to provide the highest quality of care for your residents. And that brings us to the end of our communication session. Are there any questions or comments? While you're thinking about your questions, there are some great resources. If you want to scan that QR code or follow the link that Alex has just put in the chat, some great examples of feedback survey templates, of good questions to ask in career development conversations, of how to employ active listening when you're communicating to people, a whole range of different resources to help you improve your communication. And in order to access your CPD certificate, again, you can scan the QR code here, or you can follow the link that Alex has put in the chat. I think you've got to put your email in, and then you can access your CPD certificate for this session.
I missed the last week's session.
Jennifer, well,
Yeah.
okay. Alex, would you like to explain how Jennifer can
Yeah.
access last week's session?
No,
Absolutely.
I've watched it. I've watched it because I received also the link for the
For the
team. But
recording.
it's just
Yeah.
that I didn't participate. Yeah, because I didn't participate, I can't be able to get the CPD accredited
So you
certificate.
can still get your CPD credit if you've watched the recording. So if you watched right to the end, you'll find you'll see the QR code on the recording. So if you've watched it and you get to the end, then you'll be able to scan that QR code and you can pop in your email address and then claim your certificate.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm a team leader in care home. I want to progress as well. So I don't know how to go about it. I know it's going to take me a while going through college and all of that.
Well,
I have my level 3 adult and social care.
Jennifer, you contributed really well to that session, so I think that you're going to be just fine. I think you're going to be great.
Okay, then. Thank you.
I've just added a couple more links into the chat that might be useful, Jennifer, if you've not seen them already. If you haven't already, I'd really recommend joining the Care Leaders Bootcamp, which is a 5-week email-based program that we've got running at the moment, which covers a lot of the topics that Mark's discussing in these sessions in more detail. So definitely sign up to that. You just need to pop in your email address. And I've also popped in a link to the next webinar in our Learning Lounge series with Mark, which will be next week, same time, same place, and it's all about health and well-being. So we're moving on to supporting your team and their wellness and mental health. So hopefully you'll be able to join us there. But if anybody can't make it live, always remember I will send a recording out after the session as well. So yeah, I think
Thank
that's
you
everything.
very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much, everyone, and
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Okay,
Thank you.
see
Bye-bye.
next
See you
week.
then.
Bye.
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 Bye.